The brown leather wallet hit the polished mall floor with a soft thud that somehow cut through the noise of holiday shoppers rushing past. And Jake Anderson's hand shot out instinctively to catch it before someone kicked it away. He had been walking with his 5-year-old daughter Emma, her small hand tucked in his, when he spotted the wallet sliding across the tile. A woman in an elegant cream coat was walking quickly ahead, phone pressed to her ear, completely unaware she had dropped it. Jake's first thought was how much losing a wallet would ruin his own week hell. His entire month and his feet were moving before he could think twice. "Emma, stay right here, sweetie," he said, positioning her next to a bench. "Don't move." "Okay, Daddy," Emma said, clutching her worn teddy bear tighter. Jake scooped up the wallet and jogged after the woman, weaving through the crowd. "Excuse me, madam, you dropped this." The woman turned and Jake nearly stumbled. She was beautiful in a way that seemed almost out of place in the chaotic mall, sharp green eyes, auburn hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and a face that belonged on magazine covers. But more than that, she looked exhausted, stressed, the kind of tired that came from more than just a long day. "Oh my God," she breathed, pressing a hand to her chest. Her phone call forgotten, she lowered the device. Thank you so much." Jake handed over the wallet, noting how expensive the leather felt even in that brief exchange. "No problem, saw it fall, figured you'd want it back." She clutched the wallet like it was a lifeline, and Jake noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "You have no idea, I've been having the worst day, the worst week, actually." She looked up at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression softened. "Most people would have just kept walking or kept it." "Not how I was raised," Jake said with a shrug. He glanced back at Emma, making sure she was still where he left her. She was swinging her legs on the bench, talking to her teddy bear. "Plus, I've got a little girl, want to set a good example." The woman followed his gaze and smiled genuinely for the first time. "She's adorable. How old?" 5, Emma, she's my whole world." Jake felt that familiar tug in his chest, the one that came whenever he thought about how much responsibility rested on his shoulders. Single dad. Barely making rent some months, but Emma never went without food or love, even if everything else was a struggle. "I'm Aria Fitzgerald," the woman said, extending her hand. "I really can't thank you enough." "Jake Anderson," he replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Really, it's nothing. Have a good rest of your day." He started to turn away, but Aria's voice stopped him. "Wait, please. Can I at least buy you coffee or hot chocolate for your daughter? I know it sounds strange, but you just saved me from a complete disaster." Jake hesitated. Emma had been good all morning while he ran errands and tried to find a decent deal on a winter coat for her. She deserved a treat, and something about this woman seemed genuine. Lonely, even, despite the expensive clothes and the confident demeanor. "Sure," he found himself saying. Emma would love some hot chocolate. They ended up at a small cafe tucked into a corner of the mall, away from the main rush of shoppers. Emma sat between them, carefully sipping her hot chocolate and getting a whipped cream mustache that made both adults smile. Jake ordered plain coffee. He always ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a habit born from years of counting every dollar. "So what made today so terrible?" Jake asked, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, that's probably too personal." Aria shook her head, wrapping her hands around her latte. "No, actually, it might be nice to talk to someone who doesn't have an agenda." She paused, seeming to measure her words. "I'm in the process of finalizing a very complicated business deal. Today, I was supposed to meet with someone important, but they canceled last minute. Then my car wouldn't start. My assistant is out sick, and I've been fielding angry calls all morning. Losing my wallet would have been the final straw. All my cards, my ID, everything." "Sounds like you need a vacation," Jake said. "I need a lot of things," Aria replied, and something in her tone made Jake look at her more carefully. Despite the expensive clothes and the put-together appearance, she looked profoundly lonely. He recognized that look. He saw it in the mirror sometimes, late at night after Emma was asleep and the apartment was too quiet. "Daddy, can I go look at the toys?" Emma asked, pointing to a small toy store visible from the cafe. "We're not buying anything, Em," Jake said gently. "I know, I just want to look." He glanced at the store. It was right across the walkway, visible from where they sat. "Okay, but stay where I can see you. Don't leave that store." "I won't." Emma scrambled down from her chair and skipped toward the toy store, her teddy bear tucked under her arm. "She's very well behaved," Aria observed. "She's a good kid, makes it easier." Jake took a sip of his coffee. "Her mom's not in the picture, so it's just us. Has been for 3 years now. I'm sorry." "Don't be, we're doing fine." It wasn't entirely true they were struggling, always one emergency away from financial disaster, but Jake had his pride. Emma was fed, clothed, loved. That was what mattered. Aria was quiet for a moment, watching Emma through the cafe window as the little girl carefully examined stuffed animals twice her size. "Can I ask you something? And please don't think I'm crazy." "Sure," Jake said, curious now. "Do you believe in fate?" "In meeting the right person at exactly the right time," Jake thought about it. "I don't know, maybe." "Why?" Aria turned to look at him directly, and the intensity in her eyes caught him off guard. "Because I've been praying for a solution to my problems for weeks now. And then you appear, out of nowhere, returning my wallet when you could have just walked past. And now we're sitting here and you're—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "Never mind, I'm not making sense." "You're making some sense," Jake said carefully, "but I'm just a guy who returned a wallet. I'm not sure I'm anyone's solution to anything." "You might be surprised," Aria said softly. They talked for another 20 minutes while Emma played across the walkway. Jake learned that Aria had inherited her family's company 5 years ago, that she worked constantly, that she barely had time for a personal life. She learned that Jake worked construction, that money was tight but they were managing, that he'd do anything for his daughter. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, and Jake found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in months. When Emma returned, declaring she was hungry, Jake checked his watch and realized they'd been there for over an hour. "We should get going. Thanks for the coffee." "Wait," Aria said, pulling out her phone. "Can I get your number? I'd like to stay in touch." "As friends," she added quickly, but there was a hopefulness in her eyes that made Jake's heart skip. He gave her his number, telling himself it was just being polite, that nothing would come of it. That women who wore designer coats and had assistants didn't really want to be friends with construction workers who drove 10-year-old trucks. But 3 days later, his phone rang with an unknown number, and when he answered, Aria's voice came through warm and a little nervous. "Hi, Jake." "This is probably weird, but I couldn't stop thinking about something. Do you have plans this Saturday?" Emma was building a tower of blocks on the living room floor of their small apartment. Jake watched her while he held the phone, his heart beating faster than it should. "Nothing concrete. Why?" "There's a charity event I have to attend. A gala. I know it's last minute and probably presumptuous, but would you be my date? As friends," she added again, and Jake wondered if she was trying to convince him or herself. I really enjoyed talking to you. And these events are always full of people who only want something from me. It would be nice to have someone there who doesn't." Jake looked down at his worn jeans, at the apartment that was clean but shabby, at Emma's toys that were mostly secondhand. "Aria, I don't even own a suit." "I can handle that. Please. I know it's a lot to ask." Something in her voice, that loneliness he'd recognized at the mall, made him say yes. And that was how Jake Anderson found himself standing in an upscale tailor shop the next day, getting fitted for a tuxedo he never imagined wearing, while Aria insisted on paying and wouldn't hear any arguments. "This is too much," Jake protested, as the tailor measured his shoulders. "It's a gift." "For returning my wallet," Aria said, but they both knew it was more than that. "That was a very expensive wallet, apparently," she laughed, and Jake realized he liked making her laugh. "Besides, I need you to look the part. These events are full of sharks. Having you there will keep me sane." Saturday arrived too quickly. Jake's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, agreed to watch Emma for the evening, The little girl was excited about having a sleepover with Mrs. Chen's granddaughter, which helped ease Jake's guilt about leaving her. "You look like a prince, Daddy," Emma declared when Jake emerged from his bedroom in the tuxedo. "I feel like I'm playing dress up," Jake admitted, but the fit was perfect, and he had to admit he looked good. When the car service area scent arrived at his building, Jake felt completely out of his depth. This only intensified when the car pulled up to a historic downtown hotel, where valets were parking luxury vehicles and men in tuxedos escorted women in glittering gowns through marble columns. Aria was waiting in the lobby, and when Jake saw her, his breath caught. She wore a midnight blue gown that hugged her figure, her auburn hair swept up elegantly, diamonds at her throat and ears. She was stunning. And when she saw him, her face lit up with a smile that made all his nervousness worth it. "You clean up very well," she said, taking his arm. "You look incredible," Jake replied, and meant it. "Ready to face the sharks? Lead the way." The ballroom was magnificent crystal chandeliers, round tables with white linens and elaborate centerpieces, a string quartet playing soft classical music. Jake had never been anywhere like it. People were networking, laughing, drinking champagne that probably cost more per glass than Jake spent on groceries in a week. "Stay close," Aria murmured as heads turned toward them. "People are going to be curious about you." She wasn't wrong. Within minutes of entering, they were approached by a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked at Jake with barely concealed curiosity. "Aria, darling, who's your friend?" the man asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is Jake Anderson," Aria said smoothly. "Jake, this is Robert Manning. He's on the board of my company." Jake shook the man's hand firmly, meeting his gaze steadily. Years of construction work had taught him not to be intimidated by anyone, no matter how much money they had. "Anderson," Robert repeated, clearly searching his memory for the name. "What do you do, Jake?" "Construction," Jake said simply. Robert's eyebrows rose slightly. "How interesting. And how do you know Aria? We met at the mall," Aria said before Jake could answer. "He returned my wallet when I dropped it. We became friends." The way she said friends sounded almost defensive, and Jake realized there was going to be a lot of this. But if Aria could handle it, so could he. The evening progressed with similar interactions. Aria introduced Jake to various people business associates, old family friends, other company executives. Some were polite but dismissive. Others were openly curious or skeptical. A few were genuinely friendly. Through it all, Jake held his own, answering questions honestly and not trying to be something he wasn't. During dinner, seated at Aria's table with several board members and their spouses, Jake found himself actually enjoying the conversations. He might not have a business degree, but he was smart, well-read, and could hold his own in discussions about current events and economics. More than once, he caught Aria watching him with something like pride in her eyes. "You're doing great," she whispered during a lull in conversation. "These people aren't as scary as I thought," Jake admitted. "Some of them, anyway." After dinner, there were speeches and an auction for charity. When Aria was called up to the stage to speak about her company's donations, Jake watched from the table, seeing yet another side of her. She was confident, articulate, commanding. This was her world, and she navigated it with ease. But when she returned to the table and sat beside him, she let out a small, relieved breath. "Hate public speaking," she confessed. "Could have fooled me. You were perfect. You're good for my ego." When the dancing started, Aria looked at him hopefully. "I don't suppose you dance. I can manage a basic slow dance without stepping on your feet, probably." She laughed and took his hand, leading him to the dance floor. Jake pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers, and they swayed to the music. She fit perfectly against him, her head just at the right height to rest near his shoulder if she wanted to. "Thank you for coming tonight," Aria said softly. "This would have been unbearable alone." "I'm glad I came," Jake admitted, "though I still feel like I'm in over my head. You fit in better than half the people here. You're real, Jake. That's rare in my world." They danced through 2 songs, and Jake was acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched, of the subtle scent of her perfume, of how right this felt despite how different their lives were. When they finally left the gala around 10, stepping out into the cool night air, Aria looked up at him. "Do you want to get coffee? Real coffee, not fancy gala coffee. I'm not ready for the night to end." Jake should have said no, should have recognized that this was heading somewhere complicated. But he found himself saying, "Yeah, I'd like that." They ended up at a 24-hour diner, still in their formal wear, drawing amused looks from the late-night crowd. Sitting in a cracked vinyl booth, drinking mediocre coffee and splitting a slice of pie, they talked for another 2 hours about everything and nothing. "Can I tell you something?" Aria asked, her fingers tracing patterns on the tabletop. "Sure. Tonight reminded me what I've been missing. I've been so focused on the company, on proving myself, on living up to my family's legacy, that I forgot what it's like to just be with someone. To enjoy someone's company without it being about business or networking or maintaining appearances." Jake covered her hand with his. "For what it's worth, I had a great time tonight, even with all the sharks." She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. "I want to see you again, not at a gala or a charity event, just us. Is that crazy? We barely know each other." "It's a little crazy," Jake admitted. "But I want that too. What about Emma? I don't want to complicate things for her." The fact that Aria's first thought went to his daughter made Jake's heart swell. "Let's take it slow, see where this goes. I'm not going to introduce her to someone unless I'm sure." "That's smart. Good parenting." Aria squeezed his hand. "So, dinner next week, somewhere normal, no tuxedos." "That I can definitely do." Over the next few weeks, Jake and Aria began spending more time together. They met for coffee, for dinners at casual restaurants, for walks in the park. Aria started dressing more casually when they met jeans and sweaters instead of designer suits. She laughed more, smiled more. Jake saw the stress lines around her eyes gradually soften. They talked about their lives, their hopes, their fears. Jake told her about his ex-wife, who had left when Emma was 2, struggling with postpartum depression and addiction, and who they hadn't heard from in years. Aria told him about the crushing pressure of running a billion-dollar company at 32, of board members who still saw her as the 27-year-old who had inherited the position rather than earned it, of how lonely it was at the top. "I want to meet Emma," Aria said one evening, a month after the gala. They were at Jake's apartment, Aria's first time there, and she looked around at the modest space without judgment. "If you're ready for that." Jake had been thinking about this. Emma was his world, and introducing her to someone he was dating because they were dating now, even if they hadn't defined it yet, was a big step. But he trusted Aria. More than that, he was falling for her. Hard. "Okay," he said. "Maybe we can go to the zoo this weekend." Something fun and low pressure. Saturday arrived sunny and cold. Emma was excited about going to the zoo, and when Jake told her his friend Aria would be joining them, she was curious but not worried. She was a friendly, open child, comfortable with new people. Aria arrived wearing jeans, boots, and a thick sweater, her hair in a simple ponytail. She had a gift bag in her hand, which immediately caught Emma's attention. "Hi, Emma," Aria said, kneeling down to be at eye level with the little girl. "Your dad's told me so much about you. I brought you something small. I hope that's okay." Emma looked at Jake for permission, and he nodded. Inside the bag was a stuffed elephant, soft and high quality but not ostentatiously expensive. "I love elephants," Emma exclaimed, hugging the toy. "Thank you." "Your dad mentioned you like animals. That's why I thought the zoo would be fun." The day was perfect. Emma warmed to Aria immediately, chattering about her favorite animals and pulling both adults around the zoo to see everything. Aria was patient and engaged, asking Emma questions and genuinely listening to the answers. She didn't talk down to her or try too hard. It was natural, easy. At the elephant exhibit, Emma's favorite, the little girl, stood between them, holding both their hands, and Jake's heart clenched with emotion. This felt right. Like a family, it was terrifying and wonderful all at once. "She's amazing," Aria said that evening after they'd dropped Emma off at home and stepped outside for a moment while Emma watched a movie. "You're doing an incredible job with her. She makes it easy," Jake said. "But thank you. Today was great. She really liked you." "I really liked her, and I really like you." Aria stepped closer, looking up at him. "Is it too soon to say that I'm falling for you?" Jake cupped her face gently. "Not if I can say it back." Their first kiss was soft, tentative, perfect. When they pulled apart, Aria was smiling. "I should go, but I'll call you tomorrow." "I'd like that." Over the next 2 months, their relationship deepened. They saw each other several times a week. Sometimes Emma was with them trips to museums, parks, family restaurants. Other times, when Emma was with Mrs. Chen or at a friend's house, Jake and Aria had time alone. They grew more comfortable with each other, more intimate, more in love, but there were challenges. Aria's world kept intruding. There were business emergencies that cut dates short. Paparazzi who caught them together and published photos online, prompting invasive speculation about who Jake was. Board members who expressed concern about Aria's distraction. The stress of maintaining 2 very different lives. "I don't know how to do this," Aria confessed one night. They were at her penthouse apartment the first time Jake had seen where she lived. It was enormous, beautifully decorated, and felt impersonal, like a hotel. "My whole life is the company. I don't know how to balance that with what I want for us." "What do you want for us?" Jake asked. "Everything. A real relationship. A future. But I'm terrified of screwing this up. I'm terrified the board will use this against me. I'm terrified you'll get tired of dealing with all my baggage." Jake pulled her into his arms. "I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, your life is complicated, but you're worth it." "We're worth it. What if I can't give you what you need? What if I'm too broken, too damaged by my lifestyle?" "You're not broken. You're just stressed and overworked." Jake tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. "But something's got to give, Aria. You can't keep running yourself into the ground." She knew he was right. The company was consuming her, and it had been for 5 years. She rarely slept, barely ate, lived on coffee and stress. And lately, she'd been realizing that the life she was living wasn't the life she wanted. "What would you do?" she asked. "If you were me?" "I'd figure out what actually matters and prioritize that. Delegate the rest. You've got a whole team of people working for you. Let them do their jobs." "It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" The conversation planted a seed. Over the next few weeks, Aria started making changes. She hired a new chief operating officer, someone she trusted to handle day-to-day operations. She set boundaries with her board, establishing working hours and making it clear she wouldn't be available 24/7 anymore. She started saying no to events that weren't essential. The board wasn't happy. Robert Manning, in particular, became increasingly vocal about his concerns. "You're jeopardizing everything your family built," he told her at a contentious board meeting. "And for what? Some construction worker you picked up at a mall?" Aria's eyes flashed dangerously. "Jake has nothing to do with my management decisions. I'm making these changes because they're necessary for my health and the long-term success of this company. And you don't get to talk about him like that. The board has serious concerns about your judgment lately." "Then the board can vote on my leadership if they want, but I'm not going back to working myself to death to make you all comfortable." The meeting ended tensely, but Aria held her ground. And when she told Jake about it later, sitting in his truck outside Emma's school where they were picking her up, he squeezed her hand supportively. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I might have just tanked my career. Or you might have saved it. Either way, you stood up for yourself." "That takes guts." Emma bounded out of the school building, her backpack bouncing, and climbed into the truck. "Hi, Aria. Guess what? I got a gold star today for my reading." "That's amazing," Aria said, turning to give the little girl her full attention. "What did you read about?" As Emma chattered about her school day, Jake drove them to get ice cream. This had become their routine area, joining them for pickups, when she could, casual family time that felt increasingly natural. Emma had started referring to Aria as her friend, and sometimes asked when they'd see her again if a few days passed. One evening, 6 months into their relationship, after Emma was asleep, Aria and Jake sat on his worn couch, her head on his shoulder. "I've been thinking about something," Aria said quietly. "Dangerous," she smiled. "I'm serious. I've been thinking about what I want my life to look like, and I keep coming back to this, to you and Emma, to these simple moments, to feeling like I can actually breathe. And I think I want to step back from the company. Not completely, but significantly. I want to promote the new COO to CEO. Stay on as chairman of the board, maintain involvement in major decisions, but stop living and breathing that company every minute." Jake sat up slightly to look at her. "That's a big decision. Are you sure?" "I'm sure that I can't keep living the way I have been. I'm sure that I want a life, a real life, outside of boardrooms and business deals. And I'm sure that I want that life to include you, both of you. What would you do with all that free time?" "I don't know. Figure it out as I go. Maybe do more with the charitable foundation side of things. Maybe travel. Maybe just learn how to be a normal person who has relationships and hobbies and doesn't check her email 70 times a day." Jake kissed her forehead. "Whatever you decide, I support you. Just make sure you're doing it for you, not just for us." "I'm doing it for me," Aria said. "But you're part of me now, you and Emma both." The transition wasn't smooth. The board fought her, Robert Manning especially. There were tense meetings, legal consultations, negotiations about her role and compensation. The press had a field day with the story "Billionaire steps down for love," they said. Aria fielded dozens of interview requests, most of which she declined. Through it all, Jake was her rock. He listened when she needed to vent, held her when she cried from frustration, celebrated with her when small victories happened. He never told her what to do, but he asked good questions that helped her think through her options. 3 months later, the transition was complete. Aria was still chairman, still involved in the company, but the day-to-day operations were no longer her responsibility. She had her life back. "What do you want to do first?" Jake asked her the morning after her last day as CEO. "Sleep for a week," Aria said, but she was smiling. "And then maybe we could take Emma somewhere fun. I've never been to the beach." "You've never been to the beach. How is that possible?" Family vacations were always to European cities or business conferences. The beach wasn't educational enough. She said it lightly, but Jake heard the sadness underneath. "Then we're definitely going to the beach." They spent a long weekend at the coast, Jake, Aria, and Emma. They built sandcastles, collected shells, splashed in the waves. Emma was delighted, and watching her daughter laugh and play, Jake felt a contentment he hadn't experienced in years. Watching Aria with Emma, patient and loving and fully present, he felt something else entirely. On their last evening, after Emma had fallen asleep in the beach house they'd rented, Jake and Aria walked along the shore under the stars. "I've been wanting to talk to you about something," Jake said, his heart pounding. "That sounds serious." "It is, kind of." He stopped walking, taking both her hands. "I love you, Aria. I've loved you for a while now, but I wanted to be sure. Sure that this was real, sure that we could make it work despite how different our worlds are, and I'm sure now." "I love you too," Aria said, her eyes bright with emotion. "You know I do. I want us to be a family, a real family. I want you in our lives permanently. Emma adores you, I adore you, and I know it's complicated and there's a lot to figure out, but..." "Yes," Aria interrupted, laughing and crying at the same time. "Whatever you're asking, yes." "I haven't actually asked anything yet." "Then ask." Jake took a deep breath. "Move in with us. I know my apartment is tiny and nothing like what you're used to, and maybe eventually we'd need something bigger, but I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to build a life with you. Will you move in with us?" "Yes," Aria said again, throwing her arms around him. "Yes, absolutely yes." They kissed under the stars, the waves providing a soundtrack, and Jake felt like everything in his life had led to this moment. The practicalities took some time to work out. Aria insisted on getting a bigger place, not her penthouse, which she sold. but a comfortable house in a good school district with a yard for Emma. Jake initially protested, uncomfortable with the financial disparity, until Aria pointed out that they were a couple now and her resources were their resources. "I'm not trying to take care of you," she said. "I'm trying to build a home with you. There's a difference." "I want to contribute," Jake insisted. "I need to contribute." "Then contribute. Pay what you would have paid in rent at your apartment, but let me use my money to give us space and security. Let me do this, please." They compromised as they'd learned to do on many things. Jake contributed financially to the household in ways that felt meaningful to him, while Aria handled the larger expenses. More importantly, they divided household labor equally, cooking, cleaning, caring for Emma. Aria had never realized how satisfying it could be to cook a family dinner or help a child with homework. Emma adjusted beautifully to having Aria around all the time. She started calling her Aria, but with a special tone that suggested she was more than just Dad's girlfriend. The three of them fell into routines: weekend breakfasts together, movie nights, homework time, bedtime stories. One evening, about 4 months after Aria moved in, Emma crawled into Jake's lap with her serious face on. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Is Aria going to stay forever?" Jake glanced at Aria, who was watching from the kitchen with curiosity. "Would you like her to stay forever?" Emma nodded vigorously. "I love her. She feels like family now. She feels like family to me too, baby. Then can she be family for real?" "Like, can you get married?" Out of the mouths of babes, Jake thought. He and Aria hadn't talked about marriage explicitly, though it felt like the natural next step. But he'd been nervous about the topic. His first marriage had ended so badly, and despite how different this relationship was, some part of him was still scarred by that experience. "That's something Aria and I would need to talk about," Jake said carefully, "but I'm glad you'd be happy if we did." Later that night, after Emma was in bed, Aria brought it up. "So, marriage. Emma has opinions, apparently. She's not the only one." Aria sat beside him on the couch. "I've been thinking about it too. I want to marry you, Jake. I want to be Emma's stepmom officially. I want us to be a real family in every sense." "You're sure? Marriage is a big deal. I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." Jake pulled a small box from his pocket and Aria gasped. "You've got to be kidding me." "I've been carrying this around for 3 weeks, trying to find the perfect moment. I guess there's no time like the present." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring, elegant but not ostentatious, something he'd saved for over months. "Aria Fitzgerald, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said through happy tears. "Yes, of course, yes." They told Emma the next morning, and her delighted shriek probably woke up the neighbors. She insisted on calling Mrs. Chen immediately to share the news, and then wanted to call everyone she'd ever met. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and by the end of the day, all three of them were exhausted from excitement. The wedding planning was a study in compromise. Aria's world expected a huge society wedding, but neither she nor Jake wanted that. They settled on something medium-sized: family, close friends, and a select few business associates who had genuinely supported them. The ceremony was in a garden, Emma serving as the flower girl and beaming throughout. When Jake saw Aria walking down the aisle toward him, simple white dress and genuine smile, he felt tears prick his eyes. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was his. They were choosing each other, choosing this life, choosing to be a family. Their vows were personal, heartfelt. Jake promised to support her dreams, to be her partner in everything, to love her through good times and bad. Aria promised to be a loving mother to Emma, to build a life focused on what mattered most, to choose their family every day. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. At the reception, Emma gave a toast that was mostly nonsense but ended with "I'm so happy Aria is my mommy now," which made everyone laugh and cry simultaneously. "You know she's going to want to call you Mom eventually," Jake told Aria as they danced their first dance as husband and wife. "I hope she does," Aria replied. I never thought I'd be anyone's mother, and now I can't imagine my life without her, without both of you. No regrets about the billionaire CEO life. Not even for a second. This is worth more than any company. Their honeymoon was a week in the mountains skiing, hot chocolate, and a lot of alone time while Emma stayed with Mrs. Chen and had the time of her life. When they returned, tanned and relaxed and more in love than ever, Emma attached herself to both of them like a barnacle and declared they were never allowed to leave her again. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Jake continued working construction, though he'd moved to a smaller company with better hours and more stability. Aria spent her time on the charitable foundation, which she'd become passionate about, and on being present for Emma. She attended school events, helped with homework, volunteered in Emma's classroom. She and Jake shared cooking duties, and Aria discovered she loved trying new recipes. They had their challenges. Money occasionally became a point of tension, Jake's pride sometimes clashing with Aria's resources. They learned to navigate it, to communicate, to remember they were on the same team. There were also the lingering pressures from Aria's former life board meetings she had to attend, business decisions she needed to weigh in on, occasional social obligations. But she'd gotten much better at setting boundaries and prioritizing her family. About a year into their marriage, Emma started asking about siblings. "All my friends have brothers or sisters," she complained one evening. Jake and Aria exchanged glances. They'd talked about this privately but hadn't made any decisions. "Would you want a brother or sister?" Aria asked carefully. "Yes, someone to play with and to be in a family with." Emma's logic was simple but compelling. Later, after Emma was asleep, they discussed it more seriously. "I always wanted more kids," Jake admitted, "but I never thought it would happen after Emma's mom left. I assumed I'd be doing this alone." "I never thought I'd have any kids," Aria said. "I didn't think I had the capacity to be a good mother, but Emma's shown me I was wrong about that." "You're an incredible mother. So what do you think? Should we try?" "I think Emma would be thrilled, and I think I'd love to have a baby with you," Aria smiled. "Then let's do it." 4 months later, they had wonderful news to share. Aria was pregnant. Emma's reaction was predictably enthusiastic. She immediately started planning how she would help with the baby, what they would name it, whether it would be a boy or girl. The pregnancy was smooth, and throughout it, Jake was amazed by Aria. She glowed, yes, but more than that, she embraced it fully. She read all the books, went to all the appointments, talked to the baby constantly. She'd come so far from the stressed, exhausted woman he'd met in the mall 2 years ago. "I can't believe that returning my wallet led to all this," Aria said one evening, her hand on her growing belly. "Fate," Jake replied. "You asked me if I believed in it, remember?" "I remember. Do you believe now?" "Yeah, I do. I think you were exactly who I needed, and I was exactly who you needed. Right place, right time." Their son was born on a crisp October morning. They named him Matthew, and Emma declared him the best baby brother in the world approximately 5 minutes after meeting him. Jake held his newborn son and felt overwhelmed with gratitude for his family, for his wife, for the life they'd built together. Aria took to mothering a newborn with the same determination she'd brought to everything else in her life. She was tired, sometimes frustrated, but always loving. Jake helped as much as possible, and they functioned as a team. Emma was a surprisingly helpful big sister, always wanting to fetch diapers or sing to the baby. The night they brought Matthew home from the hospital, the 4 of them sat together in the living room, Jake holding the baby. Emma snuggled against Aria, soft lamplight making everything warm. "This is everything I never knew I wanted," Aria said softly. "No regrets." Jake asked, not for the first time. "Not a single one. That day at the mall, I was at my lowest point. I felt trapped, exhausted, alone. And then you appeared and returned my wallet, and something in me recognized you, recognized that you were important. That you might be the answer I'd been looking for. I just returned a wallet. You returned my faith in people, in kindness, in the possibility of a different life." She smiled at him. "You saved me, Jake. You and Emma both." "I think we saved each other," Jake replied. Over the next several years, their family continued to grow and thrive. Emma excelled in school, showing particular aptitude for science. Matthew grew into a curious, energetic toddler. Jake's construction business picked up, and he eventually became a foreman with steady, reliable income. Aria's foundation expanded, funding educational programs and scholarships for underprivileged children. They bought a bigger house when Matthew needed his own room, still nothing ostentatious, but comfortable, with a big backyard where the kids could play. They adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Sunny that became Emma's constant companion. They took family vacations, celebrated holidays with traditions they built together, had Friday movie nights and Sunday pancake breakfasts. Robert Manning and the other skeptical board members eventually came around when they saw that Aria's leadership from the chairman position was actually more effective than her micromanaging CEO approach had been. The company thrived under the new structure, and Aria's well-being improved dramatically. She'd found balance, that elusive thing that had seemed impossible before. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Jake and Aria renewed their vows in a small ceremony with just their children and closest friends. Emma was 11 now, Matthew was 3, and both participated enthusiastically. Afterward, at the celebration dinner, Emma gave a speech that was far more articulate than her flower girl toast had been. "When I was little, it was just me and Dad," Emma said, "and I was happy because Dad is the best. But sometimes I saw other families with moms and brothers and sisters, and I wished we could have that too. Then Dad brought Aria home, and she was so nice and fun. She didn't try to be my mom right away. She was just there, like a friend, but gradually she became more. She became the mom I'd always wanted, and then we got Matthew, and we became a real family. The family I'd dreamed about. So thank you, Aria, for finding us, and thank you, Dad, for being brave enough to let her in." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night, lying in bed together while the kids slept down the hall, Jake and Aria talked about how far they'd come. 5 years, Aria marveled. "It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "Best 5 years of my life," Jake said. "Well, except for the years when Emma was born." "But you get what I mean." "I do, and I feel the same way." She rolled to face him. "Do you ever think about that day at the mall, about how easily we might have missed each other? Sometimes. If Emma hadn't wanted to go that day, if I'd walked past your wallet, if you'd said no to coffee." So many small choices that led to this. I'm glad we made the right ones. Life wasn't perfect, no life was. There were still hard days, arguments, stresses. Matthew went through a terrible twos phase that tested everyone's patience. Emma struggled with anxiety in middle school and needed therapy and extra support. Jake dealt with a work injury that had him out of commission for 6 weeks. Aria occasionally struggled with her identity post-CEO, wondering if she'd given up too much, but through it all, they had each other. They communicated, they compromised, they remembered what mattered most. Jake learned to accept help and to let Aria's resources benefit their family without shame. Aria learned that success didn't have to mean constant work, that being present for her family was its own kind of achievement. When Emma was 16, she wrote a college application essay about her family. She showed it to Jake and Aria one evening, nervous about their reaction. "My family isn't traditional," the essay began. "My parents didn't meet in college or through mutual friends. They met because my dad returned a wallet to a stranger at a mall. That stranger happened to be a billionaire, but Dad didn't know that. He just knew it was the right thing to do. That small act of kindness changed all our lives. It brought my stepmom into our family, showed me what love and commitment look like, and taught me that sometimes the most important moments start with simple choices to be decent human beings. My dad could have walked past that wallet, but he didn't, because that's not who he is. He's the kind of man who does the right thing even when it's inconvenient, even when no one's watching, even when there's nothing in it for him. That's the kind of person I want to be, Aria cried, reading it. That's beautiful, Emma. It's the truth, Emma said simply. You too are the best example of love I could ask for. At 26, Emma would graduate with a degree in biomedical engineering, having received multiple scholarships, including one from Aria's foundation. She'd grown into a confident, compassionate young woman who volunteered regularly and spoke often about wanting to make a difference in the world. Matthew, at 14, was showing similar character. He was involved in environmental activism at his school and spent his summers volunteering at an animal shelter. Both children had learned from their parents that privilege came with responsibility, that kindness mattered, that family was everything. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Jake and Aria threw a big party. The guest list was an interesting mix: construction workers and business executives, foundation volunteers and old family friends, neighbors and Emma's college friends, and Matthew's high school buddies. It was exactly the kind of gathering that represented their life together, blended, diverse, full of people from different worlds who'd all become part of their story. 20 years, Aria said in her toast, looking at Jake with eyes still full of love. 20 years since a struggling single dad returned my wallet at the mall and changed my life forever. I was lost back then, drowning in responsibilities and expectations, forgetting how to be human. Jake reminded me, he showed me what really mattered. He gave me a family, a purpose beyond boardrooms and profit margins, a life worth living. People sometimes ask if I regret stepping away from running the company. The answer is absolutely not. That company will outlast me. But this family, this love, these memories we've built, this is what lasts. This is what matters. Jake Anderson, you are still the best thing that ever happened to me. Jake's toast was simpler. Aria, you walked into my life when I least expected it. I thought I had everything figured out, me and Emma against the world, barely scraping by but doing it with love. You showed me we could have more. Not more money, though that helped, he added, getting laughs. But more joy, more support, more love. You became an amazing mother to Emma and Matthew. You became my partner in every sense of the word. You made me believe in second chances, in fate, in the possibility that returning a wallet could lead to forever. I love you more every day, and I can't wait to see what the next 20 years bring. They danced together while their friends and family cheered, and Jake thought about that day at the mall. How stressed he'd been, worried about money and Emma's winter coat. How he'd almost not gone shopping that day. How easily he could have missed seeing that wallet fall, but he hadn't missed it. He'd seen it, returned it, accepted a coffee invitation, taken a chance on a woman who seemed entirely out of his league, and she'd taken a chance on him right back. What are you thinking about? Aria asked as they swayed to the music. That mall, that wallet. How a 5-second decision to be decent changed absolutely everything. Best 5 seconds of my life, Aria said. Mine too. Their children joined them on the dance floor, Emma and Matthew, both tall now, both embracing their parents with affection unburdened by teenage embarrassment. This was their family built on kindness, sustained by love, proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the simplest acts of human decency. As the party continued around them, Jake held his wife close and felt nothing but gratitude. He'd been a struggling dad trying his best. She'd been a billionaire who'd forgotten how to live. Together, they'd found everything they needed. Not because of money or status or chance, but because they'd chosen each other every single day for 20 years. And they'd keep choosing each other for whatever years remained, knowing that the best investment either of them had ever made was in love, in family, in the life they'd built together. It had started with a lost wallet and a kind stranger, but it had grown into something neither could have imagined: a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes, when you're least expecting it, the right person appears at exactly the right moment. Their happily ever after wasn't just about the romance, though that remained strong. It was about the family they'd created, the values they'd instilled in their children, the example they'd set about what love and commitment really meant. It was about taking chances, showing kindness, staying true to yourself while growing with another person. Years later, when Emma told her own children about how their grandparents met, the story would still bring tears and smiles. "Your grandpa returned a wallet to a stranger," she'd say. "And that stranger became my mom." That's how our whole family began, with one person choosing to do the right thing and another person recognizing something special when she saw it. It was a story worth telling, a love worth celebrating, a life well lived together. And it had all started with a wallet hitting the floor of a crowded mall and a struggling dad who couldn't walk past without helping. Sometimes, the smallest moments create the biggest changes. Sometimes, kindness is its own reward. And sometimes, just sometimes, returning a wallet leads to finding everything you never knew you needed.